Hello, welcome to the final presentation of the Landscape Urbanism Master in Architecture students. Today we have 4 presentations. Students have been working in the last few months developing their research thesis, and today is for us and for the students an opportunity to present this to some guests that we have today that will comment, and hopefully we have an interesting conversation about what the students have developed in the last months, but also for the program and for the interest of the program in relation to some of these topics. So usually students have more time to include their feedback, but today is not the case because they are basically submitting their books on Friday. But in any case, I think it's important to have this conversation, for them to present the work to you and to a wider public. So basically we have today 4 projects. First we'll start with Water Neutral City by Wang Hong Li. Then we'll follow by Market Renaissance by Qin Shang. And then we'll continue with a project called Towards Agroecological Urbanism by Yu Sheng and Shuhen Qi. And we finalize with Cultivating Commons by Emily Powerman and Priyanka Watramani. We have 5 guests today, and I like them to introduce themselves, so they can tell us just in short who they are, so the students know a little bit about your background. We have 2 guests online. I don't know if you can hear me, Olivia, Elena.
Hi, hello, yes. Hello.
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. So if possible, I'd like to start with you, so we can test the sound and see if we can hear you. Perhaps we can start with Elena.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's really nice to see you guys, Alfredo, Clara, Eduardo. Elena Longin, I'm an architect, and I'm a postdoc researcher at TU Delft in the Netherlands. I'm also a graduate of this program, which I finished 10 years ago now. I currently part from a group called Critical Environments at TU Delft, and in another research program which is called Redesigning Deltas. Well, I think it's enough, right, Alfredo?
No, it's fine. Yeah. Thank you very much, Elena.
Thank you.
Then we continue with Olivia.
Hello, I'm Olivia. I am not an architect. I'm a PhD researcher at the University of Edinburgh. My research looks at sustainable food system transformation, and in particular the role of property in that kind of transformation. So I guess relevant to a lot of the work that's been done by the students. I know Clara and Alfredo through a collective of researchers called the Root and Branch Collective, who recently hosted an event at the AA on some of these questions. And I'm really looking forward to watching the presentations and hearing what you guys have to say.
Well, thank you very much, Olivia. We'll continue with Jamie.
Hi, I'm Jamie from Unit 38. We're an architectural cooperative based at Pelican House, which is a social centre in East London that we also kind of help run and manage. I'm also part of Abundance, which is a kind of think tank and kind of research organisation that looks at public commons partnerships. So a lot of the work we do is kind of working with community groups, commoning organisations and kind of tenants unions and things like that.
Hi, my name is Katja. I'm an architect. I have a small practice and I run 2 other projects. A small project called the Giant Doll's House Project, where we ask very different people to make a doll's house in a shoebox and make installations to have as a catalyst for discussion on homelessness, refugees and everything. And the other thing I'm working on is a research center in Chichester where we try, and that's I think how I know quite a few of you already, where we try to bring together policymakers, professionals, researchers, and the community in order to have everybody involved for the future of the town.
Thank you, Katia.
Hello, I'm Judith Reiser. I'm also an architect originally, but I have done many other things and moved on to urbanism. I did a master's degree at UCL on social sciences because I was interested to find out what is actually motivating those who have to live in our designs, and designs small scale, big scale. And I shared my professional life, which I continue, between teaching, research, and practice, and also working from bottom up with a lot of local communities.
Hi, I'm Tom. I am a games designer and academic working out of the University of Bedfordshire, and I have had the pleasure of working with this year's cohort over the past year and the previous year's cohort, kind of getting them interested in game design and how it can be applied and how it applies to all of the ideas that they've had in the projects they've got.
Okay, so well, without further ado, we'll start with Wang Ho.
Okay. Good morning. I am Guang Hongli from the engagement group. We are here to present a game as a participatory platform aimed at the dissemination of knowledge on water-sensitive, socially just policies for rural development in the UK. Here is a demo of the gameplay just to show you what it's like, and we will play it together later on. Our approach is based on strong understanding of the local context as well as water and development policies, into which are incorporated into the game rules and board design. Local engagement in various stages is proposed in combination with gameplay data gathering, and the insight from data gathered will further inform policy co-design workshops. The whole presentation is structured in this order: participation in just water policies, the game context Chichester, game design, data gathering and analysis, and long-term participatory framework. In this chapter, we explore how to engage with water effectively. Our research on the UK's water situation reveals critical challenges under privatization, particularly water scarcity. For example, the orange areas on the map highlight water catchment where demand exceeds supply, creating unsustainable imbalance. On top of those water catchment not available, here are rivers that are heavily modified, meaning these rivers' ecological functions and biodiversities are permanently lost. This leads to our first conclusion: changing the structure of water companies is a key way to engage with water. Additionally, our analysis showed that agriculture is the largest contributor to natural pollution, followed by urban runoff and leaching. This has resulted in widespread natural vulnerable zones, threatening both surface and groundwater resources. However, farmers face significant constraints due to land monopolies that undermine efficient financing of environmental policies. These monopolies in land logistics and retail create systematic barriers to sustainable water use. Combating these monopolies and funding water-sensitive agribusiness are additional ways to engage with water. Finally, we must consider how to engage with communities. Innovative approaches such as games have shown promise. The Environment Agency is also exploring how authorities can collaborate with communities on future planning and decision-making. Chichester, with its unique water issues, became the focus of our project. I'm going to introduce Chichester with a web map. Is it? Okay. So I find it more helpful to use interactive stuff. So Chichester is in the south of England, and it's divided by the Southdown National Park. Beneath it is here are the underground aquifer, and the darker colors are the chalk streams. The chalk aquifer are at least 65 million years old, and here you can see it's shell fragment of algae composed. which makes its porosity about 45%, which means it's 2 to 3 times more store more water than normal aquifer. And here, the Chichester water governance, we have the southern part water supplied by Portsmouth Water Company, and the northern is the Southern Water Company, while the whole Chichester's wastewater are handled by Southern Water Company. Here it's a bit messy. I'm trying to show here the harbor water body is an area of AONB and also a site of special scientific interest. It faces multiple challenges. First, the A27 above it has some surface runoff. There's traffic here, so the chemical concentration on the roads and again flushed down by the surface runoff goes to the, as you can see here, the red lines are the surface runoff, goes to the harbor water body. And here we have the Southbourne development, housing development. This map is probably not up to date, but here is one and another smaller one. And there are 2 major developments in the Chichester Center. Here should be the White House Farm housing development. And we have a surface runoff that goes into the harbor water body. And here is another major housing development, Shopwhite Lakes housing development. Okay, that's several challenges. Another challenge is this combined sewage overflows. It just leaks into the water bodies. The biggest one is the 11 wastewater treatment works, recorded over 6,000 hours of illegal sewage discharge last year. And that's 70% of the year. We don't know the volume, but it's still just alarming. Here, we mapped the population and the distribution of the farmland. Farmland feeds the populated urban areas, but the nutrients never circulate back. So the fertilizer farmland use are mostly polluting the harbor water body with nitrogen. So the locals have take actions to deploy some oyster cowpels to these 2 sites, and we try to see with EA's water quality data to see if these are deployed at the high concentration area. But one is here is the high concentration area, but here is not. So it's mostly because they have to take the water movement into the consideration. And there's, besides pollution in the harbor water body, there's also water scarcity in the north. Here we have the Aran Valley. It's an important wetland. However, it's upstream here, the whole goes all the way here, has extensive water abstraction, causing the downstream Aran Valley to dry. So even though it's outside of Chichester, the upstream in Chichester should be responsible. But where does all the water go? According to the West Sussex Water Management Plan 2027, some of the water goes to the southern populated area and some goes to the East Sussex. However, it's still dry, so Portsmouth Water Company have to borrow land water to it. So it's complex. Yeah, it's complex in the water governance. And there's also flood in the coastal area. Here is the west spot. However, here the southern part happens to be one of the best productive farmland in the whole country. So it's going to have a direct threat on the agricultural yield. And here to sum up, we have the water scarcity in the north, water pollution in these 2 areas, and flooding in the coastal areas. So we have chose the water catchment as our final study area to deal with these complex issues. And let's go back to the presentation. And we've mapped 2 sections. One is the current situation. Here is the south down here. So here's the north, here's the south. I'll get into this later on. And here is the ideal model. The current situation are incorporated into the game as the game map, and the ideal model are the game cards. And the future plan for Chichester can be divided in 4 types. One is for the agriculture, one is to address housing, and they need to upgrade the wastewater treatment works and the harbor water body and wetlands. So, but how to use a game to engage local populations? Game is an efficient way to help improve residents' resilience to natural disasters by using it as an educational tool to learn about environment problems and to foster individual and social learning. Game design. So we've checked out several games, whether it's role-playing, storytelling, simulation, and cards. The one that inspired us the most is the Daybreak. It takes 5 players to play World Superpower using the card to simulate global energy, economy, industry challenges, carbon emission. So it's a lot. And we started conceptualizing our game. The game view is how player perceive the game, which is mostly the game map. The game space are what player can see. So they kind of, after like 7 involvement, they kind of comes together, and we have the cards and elements to evolved for millions of times to ensure playability. Here's our final version, and we are trying to demonstrate this game space. We have the area 1, 4, and 5 with assigned with water quantity, and area 2 and 3 assigned with water quality. Here we also have the labels. For example, some of the farmland here are indicating pollutions, and some of the darker brown strings indicating drought.
Pardon, I think you cannot see the mouse if you are pointing.
Oh, you can see. Oh.
I don't know if
Great.
you have to either point with your finger or something, or do something, but they don't see.
So like here are some indicating the pollution in the farmland, and there here the brown color of the indicating drought, and we have different logos for habitat, farmland, housing, and wastewater treatment works. So the game plays for 8 rounds, which is 2 years, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 16 different cards here. The game here are, as I said before, the section are inspiration. Our game map are designed based on the sections. So here I've also mapped the distribution of groundwater and the natural flow of surface water. As you can see, the area 1's water flows. Pumps water to the area 2, and area 2's water flows to area 3 through the rivers in this way. And then area 1 also pumps water to the area 5, as we mentioned in the West Sussex Water Management Plan. And here I get into the detail of each area. So area 1, it has a lot of farmlands. It's also several SSI habitats, and it has housing problem. And its goal is to achieve water quantity and popularity. So it aligns with here, farmlands, forests is the habitat, and so is area 5. Area 5 is has the drought problem in the north, as we mentioned, is the Aran Valley, and here has the flooding issues. And area 4 is the flooded fertility. And area 3 is the polluted harbor water body. So how do we imagine the cards to affect just dynamics? Here I've take 3 institutions as stakeholders as example. They are relatively still, so there's no collaboration here. While our former interview with locals said that there are farmland reservoirs, and the farmers and landowners, they promote farmland reservoir, while the farmland reservoir can result in positive impact on the environment. So let's try to, we have this community infrastructure policy card and water recycle. So policy card mainly funds here we have cost at 3, so it mainly funds this technology card, and we have water recycle and wastewater treatment works. So what if we like add into the dynamics, and we can see if the Chiches District Council promote community infrastructure, this funding can be used to promote wastewater treatment works upgrade and water recycle, which the wastewater treatment works can result in positive results in the Chiches Harbor, while water recycle can benefit residents and the environment. However, upgrading wastewater treatment works cost a ton of money, so it can hinder water companies' profit, while the water company might raise the water price, which has a negative effect on the residents. And the more cards we add in, the more complex the dynamics is. So besides the physical game, we've also developed a digital game, online game, evolving on it. So the digital game goes like 15 different UI upgrades, and we have this AI NPC integrated at the end. And it's rather complex, so here is a network graph showing how different systems in the game communicates, and the computer game underwent 30 versions and more. And let's play, but I'm not sure if you can see the mouse. Let's just play for one round, and everyone can feel like how it feels like. Can you see the mouse? Yeah. So we can draw policy cards for 4 policy cards. It's random, but sometimes you get the similar cards. And then we can draw 5 tech cards. Agroforestry, it improves water quality and quantity each by 10. And here, on the left side, we have the description and suggestion on which areas here. And here are the cards, and here are like area 3. It has water quality issues, so its initial quality is 10, while its quantity is not big an issue, so it's 40. And each area has its unique characteristics, so player needs to take them all in. And here is the event card. I haven't introduced it, but we'll see if we can get it flipped. So now it's 30% chance of the season event. Let's see, community infrastructure. Here there is a simulation of what the cards will do to this area, and we have the funding, the seasons also, and I will apply it. And our funding updated, and the popularity updated, and the cards get snapped to that area. And here is the agroforestry. Let's apply it. And agroforestry, what if I apply it here? You can see its water quantity is 10, but it actually adds 20, so it has a multiply effect in these areas. It's not like obvious, but players get the hang of it after. And here I'm gonna discard cards so we can jump to next season. Yeah, we triggered season event. It's the tourism. It worsens the water quality and quantity, but it gives you some fundings. It's like the tourism tax. Now it's applied in area 5, and luckily we have defended with agroforestry somehow. And here I'm gonna try. I'm not sure if I have tokens, but let's try the AI NPC. So I can ask it which area is critical at the moment. See if it works. Okay. I don't think it's working. Probably I run out of tokens. And you get a hand of it. So Let's go to the data gathering and analysis. The game was play tested at Chichester with its physical version, and we bring with a chatbot that basically taking all the documents and policies that we researched in last 2 chapters, and player can ask questions about it when they were playing. And we collected some questions during the game. Well, the game here are collected like in orders. We don't know at which point of the game the question is asked. However, our online version game is able to see at which round the question is asked. And well, the online game is like not as complicated. It's less like a simplified version of the physical game because of coding is really hard. So we categorize the questions from the online game data collection. So we have strategic gameplay questions, data and information requests, outcome and direction questions. So it's mostly win and lose related. While the question gathered from the Chichester playtest is more like intriguing. So like here we have keywords extraction. So how healthy is the oyster population in the Eastern Channel? And we have people caring about upgrading water treatment, tax, second homes, and household water use, Chichester Harbor, Chichester. So we try to like cluster these keywords. And cluster 1 is like about Chichester in general, and cluster 2 are water-related keywords. The 3 is about storm, the cluster 4 is about microplastic, and cluster 5 is about second homes. Well, here like is where I introduce the long-term participatory framework because there are questions introducing like new elements that is not in the game. For example, water authorities, we can introduce new character into the game. Species, soil, microplastic, we can introduce new cards and oysters to the game. So the game, we started data gathering, and then we analyze the data, and we can abstract certain like information of the public voice and turn it into a new card and then deploy it back to the game. And the data analyst can also review the popular cards, which can be new policies. Yeah, almost done. And if the environment agency wants to propose new policies, they can like turn the new policy into the cards and like deploy in this virtual environment and see how it goes. And does player learn from playing? So here is a player's play records. The above line is the scoring of the player's card choice. So like each area has a preference of the card. You cannot tell if the player like gets better through like gets better choice through the game. But here, if you look at the number of cards played per round, you can see here we see a decrease in the cards used, which means the player is short of money. And this is where phase 1 it got hit by a like climate event in the first year summer. So it cannot resist the climate event. And here, I forgot I don't have the funding. The player is basically broke in this phase. And the second phase is started to adapting. Here, even though there is a climate event, but the player is starting to like save up money. And here in the phase 3, the player are able to keep the funding afloat, like not broke, and car use at a stable condition. And there are more frequent climate events in this phase, but the player are able to win like 2 seasons ahead. And then it already wins, so it should go all in. And here are the players.
For the sake of your college, you need to
have to finish.
Yeah, there's 2 pages left.
No, you need to
Okay.
have 30
Okay,
seconds to wrap up.
We have analyzed this and
Okay. Yeah, and the accuracy is 9 out of 13. So yeah, we summarize all the players' choice, and the accuracy is 9 out of 13, so it's around 70. Yeah, and the work is developed resulted in a publication in the Career about the LLM as planning agents in planning tasks. And yep, thank you. Sorry about that.
So anyone, if you have any questions or comments or anything.
That was really impressive. I think that's really incredible piece of design making the game, and it looks. I like that the comment on the end was it was fun to play as well. I just had a bit of a question about like I'm not a games designer. I don't play that many games, but I've played a few sort of like cooperative board games, and generally you kind of play as different characters. And in the game design, there was like water quality, water quantity, and then popularity. And I was just kind of interested in like what you meant by popularity, because like, are you playing as the environment agency, or are you the council, or are you citizens? As the district council.
Like planning official in the district council.
Okay.
So the popularity is better, like the mayor get elected, but it's not like in the coded into it, but that was the idea.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that's probably really interesting, because I think that's the really difficult thing with any policy is like you might improve the popularity amongst like the urban dwellers of Chichester, but you might really piss off the farmers upstream, and like that tension in like
talking about
for who
economic growth and the preservation of ecology.
Yeah, and the tension, I guess, in a lot of like the UK, where unlike London, you have councils that straddle like urban and rural, and the very like different demographics between like the people living there. Yeah,
there's this is actually captured by the player where she it's not sharing. Hang on. She said that Airbnb only works when you get extra money from tourism boom or industrial goals. She thinks it's weird because like the tourism tax is like a part of the economic pillar of the locals, and if you don't have money, you can't use that card. Otherwise, you're gonna go broke. So it's one of the funding stress from that.
Well, I've seen it before. I thought it was a really good presentation, and you really, I think, presentation is really nice, and you really take everybody through the game. And actually, the pictures were of the leader of the council playing the game in Chichester. So I think that was quite fortunate. I mean, I think for me, what is the limit of the game? It is the different residents. It's a big area of, for example, boating. I think you mentioned microplastics. But I assume this is a game you can expand over time with more players.
Yeah. So for now, the cards are like, I would say the cards are 16 cards there are not enough. So we only have one character, which is the planning official. If there are more cards, we can have farmers as a character and give it a set of like proper tools or proper cards, and then we have water companies as a new character and give them a set of new cards. So the cards expand, we can characterize the cards and then assign it to different characters. And then it can even evolve to multiplayer games.
Yeah, because I think, one thing which might be added in the future is the leisure industry, it's like one of the biggest sailing areas in the country, but you managed that with the microplastic. So thank you.
Thanks.
I join you in saying this was very impressive work. There's an awful lot of it, and I try to follow. I would need more time to see the details of what
I kept forgetting that the mouse is not showing up.
No, it was very impressive. You're focusing obviously on the gaming, and that's something which I'm not terribly familiar with, so I have to say. But what I was interested is you showed the key protagonists. I mean, the water companies, the local authority, the urban
causal loop,
the agriculturists, and so on. And they are very far apart, and their vested interests are really very far apart. And so, my question was: did this game manage to create some interaction between these very different positions which they have, and they will obviously want to defend, as you have shown in a way with how the problems are very related to those groups, quite specifically in these areas, which you have identified really well. But to see whether there is any opportunity for debate and consensus building, at least temporarily, and so forth, to see. It's not just needing more money, but it's also where do you put it? What are the priorities? Who counts more than who? And that is a question I wondered whether you could actually resolve with your gaming technique.
I don't. I think it's like a long run, because right now it's at this stage where lesson learned and then residents' resilience are improved, where their voice are heard by planning official. So they are playing as planning official. So their choices in the game are a type of voice for the planning official to be heard, and to strike an opportunity of bringing other stakeholders into the conversation. I don't think at the moment the game would do. The data gathered from the game does show us some different implications of like what is lacking, what people are asking at the moment. Yeah.
I think on the day the game really we had a small. They presented in Chichester, but on the day, I think your game really highlighted all the issues and the relations between them, which at this stage is very important, I think.
I agree. So I don't think it's a matter of having more protagonists. It's a matter of how the game can be a catalyst to make them interact, at least to listen to each other and their positions, to start to understand them, and maybe even accept some of it,
Yeah.
Thanks, Olivia.
Hey, thank you so much for your really great presentation. It looks like an amazing piece of work that you've made. I have a question that I think sort of follows on from some of the questions that have been asked in the audience already. But one thing I noticed about your project and about the game is that it assumes like institutional continuity. So, for example, the continued existence of water companies as governance entities, or the ongoing existence of private land ownership, say in the farming regions or in town. And I guess my question is just, did you think about including institutional change in the game as, I don't know, one of the policy options for the very powerful planning officer? Or if not, what do you think the impacts of something like that might be on the game? Sorry, it's a hard question.
That seems like really hard to do in the game. I don't know. Not at the moment. I don't know. Yeah.
It should be like a big nationalize the water companies card play. You could definitely do that. It's on. It's on. Yeah, it's good.
It's not.
Great stuff. Fab to see this again. Every time I look at it, it's kind of evolved into something sort of even more nicely designed, right? It just sort of looks great, screams that you put a huge amount of work into it. I think like the big takeaway from me watching it, the journey of the whole project today, was seeing that you went and played it with people and then realized that there was still more kind of unexplored opportunities or unexplored issues that perhaps had you not played the game with the stakeholders there, you wouldn't have been led to certain pieces of research or certain ideas. And this isn't just about, yeah, that's a good step in the design process, right? But that's also like very important from like a social and political interactive base level of like, oh, right, we didn't know that people were so concerned about microplastics in the local community, and we wouldn't have found this out from a newspaper article or some like, you know, some more distant or remote like scientific engagement. So firstly, I'd say like that's a very exciting discovery, I would say. So hopefully you were also excited about that. I was excited about that. But secondly, just from the, yeah, this isn't a question at all. Just giving you a bit of feedback. The responses from the people in the room, right? Like just because they're pointing out other ways that the game can exist, like that in itself is a powerful signal of like the imaginative power of interactivity or of imagined interactivity. So we're all imagining ourselves playing the game and imagining what we would learn from it. Regardless of whether or not that happens in the game or has happened in the game, that's just happened in our heads. So the game has a life beyond its actual playing, and it has a life in this project academically, socially, politically, and hopefully for you guys professionally. So I'd just say that's like a big success as well, and it was really cool to see that drawn out in the presentation and drawn out in these questions that we've had here. So I don't know, well done. You know.
Thanks. Well, I was like listening to Thomas, and I think one of the players actually mentioned a suggestion that's similar to what Olivia said. Let me see. Can you see the screen? Yeah, so one of the players actually suggests that area 4 is an area that's flat. So if you apply card to improve water quantity, it's like it doesn't have the multiply effect. So if the flood can happen, the card can retrigger because the card, like the green infrastructure enhancement was already deployed to absorb flood. So in a way, former card's consequence will manifest later on. So like the player wants to this more, once they already understand what the game currently is, they want it more like consequential, I don't know, experience. So it can be like the first step to like the simplest model to model institutional change in the game, I think. Okay, yeah, that's it.
Can I ask also some question? Because nobody in the room that is waiting for.
It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So, but well, I wanted to congratulate with you with this, for having created such an interesting and fascinating game and process. And I would have lots of questions because I don't think I have fully understood it completely. So I would have lots of questions about the details, but we don't have time. For example, like if you plan that there are any sort of constraints in the ways in which cards can be placed in different sub areas, if there are, I don't know, conflictual moments in which the player can go wrong choosing an option or the other. But the question that I'd like to ask you is if because the positive aspect that comes out of this is definitely about the level of engagement that you can get, which is fantastic, especially because you've developed both a digital and a real version of the game. But I was wondering if there is an aspect that you see that this kind of process have enhanced much more in empowering and informing the ways in which planners and locals, inhabitants, institutions will take decisions, that design decisions. So if there's any aspect besides the public engagement, right, and the interest that is raised, that you think that this process gives now in relation to a more common, like participatory strategy.
Yeah, the intention of the game is definitely to empower the the local residents, and we want their voice to be heard. And the voice is like not like questionnaire. I ask you a question and you like answer. It's like get the player into this virtual environment, I would say, and then start solving crisis, while the planning official also gets into the game and this environment to start solving. So they kind of gets this have this certain ground, which is the game, which they both can develop the game. So I think in a way, if like the players suggest the voice gets, I mean, the game is on my hands, right? The codes are on my hands. So if the players' voice are heard, I can like incorporate them into the game. So I guess so.
Okay, thanks. It's more about bridging and putting people together.
Together. Yeah.
So it's more about that than rather being able to input more views into the design process, which comes later on, I guess.
Input what?
I was wondering if there's an aspect of this that you think it would push a potential project to be different or better or more strategic in comparison to a different procedure, like without the game, that you would be the designer taking decisions, accordingly with and in dialogue with the same people, but what the game would really bring into the design, if there's something, or if that's not a subject, an aspect that you are concerned with, which is fine. I was just curious about it.
Oh, okay. I guess I haven't thought about this far. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wang Hong, for the presentation. So let's continue with the next presentation, Market Renaissance.
Hello everyone, I'm Qing. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to present our project, Specializing a UK Agroecological Market Garden Renaissance to you. Please give me some time to show you the summary of the project has achieved over a year of thinking and learning. This project aims at visualizing and spatializing the Landworkers Alliance Market Garden Renaissance policy proposal. Why is it important, and how much land is needed to feed food and veg to the UK population? UK currently imports up to 43% of vegetables and 85% of fruits, as represented in orange in this map. British consume only 3.9 portions of fruits and vegetables per person per day. To understand this, we collect evidence from LWA, fridge farming, and ruralization strategies, and compile them into a proposal for policy strategy in England, including developing a horticultural strategy, training new entrants, accessing land needed facility for distribution and trading, and how to unlock public procurement in cities such as Sheffield. This policy proposal, together with the spatial modeling we have developed, aims to show the potential of farm market connections at the city scale, the need of city joint action networks, and how progressive policies could help to promote a more sustainable and integrated agricultural landscapes and cities in the UK. In LWA report, community-supported agricultural CSA schemes, such as growing communities, proposes a vision of food zoning where urban areas can supply 5% of the required food, and peri-urban 17.5%, and the rural 35%. If we model the area required for 18% domestic self-sufficiency, the crop land required would increase from the previous 0.6% to 2.3% based on the yield of 18 tons per hectare. That could reach 5 portions of veg and fruit per person per day. But how can this land be distributed according to current land uses? Using Wales as a prototype, I look to answer the following question: how much land is needed to feed population? Wales has many flood risk areas, large areas of very poor soil quality and barren areas. First step, removing this restrictive condition from the land, we get available planting areas on the right-hand side. Second step was to choose peri-urban and rural areas as the areas most in need of agricultural revival, nearby towns and cities larger than 5,000 inhabitants. The third step, comparison of spatial modeling, recorded with a low yield of 3.3 tons per hectare. This one shows a medium yield of 10 tons per hectare, and this one shows a high yield of 18 tons per hectare. For this research, we will use the medium yield to create different scenarios at various scales. A UK-wide spatial modeling was created in the same way. Available cropland excludes barren areas, forest areas. Flooding areas were also identified, and very poor soil quality areas and winding peatlands areas, but including clear-cut and agricultural areas to get available cropland areas used for the spatial modeling at the UK scale shown on the right-hand side. Finally, with a medium yield, creates LW spatial modeling as peri-urban and rural areas in need of agricultural revival for whole UK. The model shows that only 4.1% of the land in the UK is necessary to cover all fruits and vegetables consumption by the British, but once it is produced, how can it be distributed? What are LW proposals to address unfair supply chains? I mainly explored CSE and school procurement in Sheffield.
Spatial modeling shows that fruits and vegetable production for the whole of population. In Sheffield, the spatial modeling shows that fruits and vegetable production for the whole of population uses 2.5% urban domestic area, 5% urban area, 17.5% peri-urban area, and 35% rural hinterland only. I used a model farm in Sheffield called Rigged Farm that uses CSA. The line shows the relationship between CSA shop, Rigged Farm, and the cooperative farms in the rural areas. Another important farm is Haley City Farm, which also has a number of cooperative farms. The barefoot trader play a vital role in supply chain. This is the delivery area. The farmer routes depend on LWA strategy. Haley City Farm runs their own products directly by catering, farm shop, farmers market, supplies produce delivered to barefoot trader. On the other hand, Rigged rural farms sell their products to barefoot traders directly. Finally, barefoot traders sell produce to CSA. The area shows the CSA delivery area in Sheffield. CSA runs urban and peri-urban farm by themselves and runs farmers market weekly. In contrast to the school procurement, where CSA's main farms are also growers that can provide public procurement for schools, the difference is that wholesalers are an important player in the school procurement supply chain. In Sheffield, the government has begun to support public procurement for primary schools by large contract for school catering and its Smart Sheffield program. In the central catering contract list have about 90 primary schools.
At the same time, Sheffield Greenbelt has a potential land for crop development. The spatial modeling shows that it requires 54% of the Greenbelt to feed the Sheffield population, which means most of the land owned by city councils, including city parks, countryside services, and brownfields. Using potentially accessible urban land and wildlife habitat corridors, we connect the urban center with the Greenbelt, as well as peatland located further afield, and other ecological elements to enhance these ecological corridors. We propose the orange color shows land of Sheffield spatial modeling within the agroecological corridor for phase 1 actions to restore ecosystems and the creation of supply chain. The rest agricultural areas as phase 2 actions, linking the agroecological corridor completed in phase 1. To form a whole agroecological area in the future. Based on specific farm cases in Sheffield, this spatial modeling of potential cropland could address the employment of around 16,500 people. However, the main challenges are long supply routes of rural products to the city center and how to attract more new entrants. Depending on ruralization policy, Eurostat indicators show an increasing trend in the urban population, but a decreasing trend in the rural areas. And the dream place of residents show peri-urban has lots of potential and scope for development.
LW spatial modeling.
Sorry.
So in Sheffield LW spatial modeling, strengthened peri-urban area can serve as a bridge, creating a network to shorten supply chain and attract new entrants from urban to rural. The first step is choosing regular farm, which is located near peri-urban areas, as a prototype for future joint-up action. This is a 6 hectares farm with a large grassland area. The actual agricultural land is about 4 hectares, including market garden, polytunnel, agroforestry, orchards, and 2 ponds. In their market garden, they use compost and green manure to manage soil, but the disadvantage is loss of pests. They can use sustainable farming incentives (SFI) to support integrated pest management, including preparing insect predator habitat, insect trap with pesticide-free crop protection, minimize development of resistance, and control temperature and humidity to manage pests. In polytunnels, they use compost and sickly soil to improve the fertility of tomatoes, cucumbers, beans, and salad cultivation. By booking volunteer planting seeds and trying to use different tools in different steps. To improve water resources, the proposal could use the polytunnel curved structure to collect rainwater into storage tanks for drip irrigation. In agroforestry, they plant green manures to manage soil, and mainly wheat, squash, and apple trees cultivation. Using SFI incentives, they can support planting hedgerow, including hedge and different productive trees together with livestock in agroforestry. And SFI funding support wildlife habitat, proposal doing the actions in the future, including planting spring oats and sowing clover for wildlife, manage grassland habitat, and prepare animal houses around ponds, and collect rainwater in 2 ponds for drip irrigation. In orchard and large area grassland, it can be used for training and activities in the future, and provide accommodations for new entrants, use solar PV and wind power to solve the problem with no electricity and just 2 staff in regular farm. At the same time, SFI policy funding support grass buffer strip, preventing pollutants such as sediment and nutrients from being carried by surface water runoff, and support planting legumes and multi-species winter cover crops on improved grassland nutrition. There are large woodland and watercourses around regular farm. Can create tree corridors connecting woodland, extend the habitat for wildlife and provide shade for people and animals. The roots can increase soil fertility, slow the rate of erosion and stormwater runoff. The second step, how to use facilities to shorten the supply chain, training and attract new entrants. Wholesalers can play an important role. By selecting one wholesaler factory to be converted into a food hub, it could become a prototype to be replicated in Sheffield to help supply the fruits and vegetable production from the agroecological farms in the Green Belt.
The image shows the AG Web and Son Sheffield wholesaler factory current state, where there is a wholesalers market. My proposal includes the idea of small wholesalers working together to create a food hub which have 4 main functions. The food hub includes an outdoor space to ensure the circular driveway and parking space to set other leisure space to attract new entrants.
Function 1 is about collecting farm products to allow rural and peri-urban farmers to trade directly with peri-urban warehouses. Based on the average weight of a square meter of fruit and vegetable box, and how many layers of boxes would make it easier for people to carry them, as well as the tons of vegetables and fruits needed for peri-urban population, was calculated to require about 16 warehouses of 2,000 square meters. The small leisure space outdoor is transformed into a wedge-boxed prototype with a market garden, hedgerows, and orchards to advocate for a market garden renaissance. Function 2 for farmers to replenish their own farm products, keeping rural farmers well resupplied on their return journey. The main produce they need to resupply are big onions, potatoes, and carrots, which are cheap, require a large area to grow, and require more equipment, so generally farms don't grow their own. Function 2 outdoor prepared parking space, market garden, lawn space, small cafe, and short sitting leisure spaces. Function 3 is redistribution to support CSE and school procurement. Proposal can deliver wedge box to CSA shop or other wedge box shop and cooperative with company like OB to get customer needs information, position, and make the efficient routes, then shop delivery to community customers. Depend on Sheffield governance, investment and procurement policy, provide successful pilot of a dynamic food procurement strategy in Somerset. The kids school catering contract control food dynamic purchasing list. And not all primary schools have their own kitchens, so can set up kitchen in warehouse to supply staff and distribution for school meals. Outdoor space is also prepared with leisure, negotiation, and dining space for staff, visitors, or cooperative partners. Function 4 is for training new agricultural workers. Depend on Battlefield Trader Network, trading proposal is divided into 5 parts, including marketing campaigns, knowledge resources, and online training, as well as help and support from other offices and business advice. New entrance follows on ruralization policy and can be divided into 6 types. Outdoor space includes sitting space, cafe, and lecture platform for training. I propose 16 new warehouses located close to para-urban primary schools. They can be managed by Battlefield Shed. I choose one group made of a warehouse, primary school, and rigged farm to show this relationship. The primary school selected is Norton Free Church of England, near Rigged Farm as an example. The school have 215 pupils.
Based on Rigged Farm figures, the farm can supply about 5.7 tons of vegetables and fruits a year and deliver 400 veg boxes per week. On the other hand, Sheffield school children make up 30% of the whole population, and children need to eat 2 portions veg and food per school lunch. Depending on this data analysis, we propose a supply chain percentage of distribution from farms and warehouses to primary schools and community veg boxes.
Action. Proposal 13% of farm yield can serve 20 pupils, provide 142 portions school lunch per week. The rest of 195 pupils can be provided by the near warehouse. So the school catering, 9% will provide by farm and 91% will provide by warehouse. And the community around the school. Proposals 87% of farm yield for community veg box can provide 353 veg boxes per week. The rest of community customers' veg boxes can be provided by the near warehouse. At the same time, community also can set up veg storage plant and run market, shops, and catering by community themselves. The third step, organization of work-plus activities connect with Oakhurst Historic Park Holiday Center. The center can connect over 20 schools. So the work-plus activities from the A Holiday Center to B Woodland Education, which near Rigged Farm, and to C Developing Farmer Cluster, which similar with D Rigged Farm, about 2.5 kilometers to attract new entrants from Holiday Center to farms.
Developing farmer clusters around woodland, we propose inside farms to create a static system by corner productive tree corridors and agroforestry to expand ecological corridors and ensure wildlife habitat mobility. On the other hand, creating a dynamic system for community engage between inter-farm trail. This is the main road of dynamic systems that already exist to reach each farms. The roads are narrow, the traffic is fast, there are no pavements, very dangerous, and there are many dead animals on the side of the road. Proposal separating the driveway system from the pedestrian system and set up farmer markets to sell products to customers directly and a small cafe for community engagement at the road junction. And the proposal the flower grow within the farm be transplanted to either side of the inter-farm trail to attract community engage. And creation of different activities for different ages. Take the farm as a sample, creating birds watching platform, making animal houses, outdoor lectures, personal vegetable garden, and some leisure facilities combine. Terraced market garden can just high slope. Depending on this, we can develop larger farmer clusters, creating two systems, inter-farm trail to create dynamic system for community engage, and to create a steady system inside the farm for wildlife habitat mobility. Developing larger farmer clusters, connection the two far distance woodlands create large-scale landscape fetching. And the proposal regular farmer clusters can start from 117 hectares of farmland and support 72 farmers, creating a long-term solution within 10 years. And it is projected that this will trigger the release of approximately 3.7 pounds for every 1 pound invested. Finally, using Sheffield City model as a sample, expanding spatial modeling to urban, domestic, urban, peri-urban, and rural to agroecological market garden renaissance joint action in all of England. This is zooming LW spatial modeling in 4 areas. To conclude this project, proposes the use of available agricultural land to produce the food and vegetables needed to feed the UK population through the spatial modeling market garden renaissance report by the Land Workers Alliance. The spatial modeling was used to create farmer-focused routes and distribution in Sheffield as a prototype. This prototype used CSE and school procurement as well as the transformation of existing warehouses into food hubs to solve food distribution and shorten the rural to city center supply chain, while attracting new entrants into the agricultural industry. We took regular farm in Sheffield as a sample to show how many less than 5 hectares farm as potential for ecological production. Government ignores unfunded. The project also looked at the connection of farms with large-scale landscape and ecological corridors for enhanced community engagement and improve wildlife habitat, multi-species recovery. That's all, thanks.
Well, thank you very much. Chin, if you have any comments or questions, anyone? Online or in person?
Well, just one. Where are the seasons in the farm? I mean, a lot of. First of all, a great presentation, and I really liked the idea of having all the farms connected and setting up this network and trying to involve the community in food and having everybody accessible. I think that's a great idea. I'm just wondering, a lot of the pictures you had, I think it was not clear whether it was summer, winter, spring, or autumn. And I think the season is quite important with food growing, or can tomatoes grow in the tunnels all year round? I was just wondering if you thought about the season and what kind of vegetables or fruit you'll get in what time of year.
When I researched the Sheffield farm case study, and I got some vegetable and fruit variety they planted in the different season. And this detail in my bullet, the presentation, I don't take the detail. By my research, I found they have the food dynamic purchasing list to control the seasonal products they provide for the school procurement. and the veg boxes and fruits list I also put in my bullet. Yeah, so seasonal product I actually I'm not focused very yeah, I'm not very clear about the seasonal product.
Okay, thank you. But other than that, I like the way how you connect all parts of the community with the food.
Thank you.
So I was going to ask the same question actually, because I used to get a veg box that I picked up in Hackney, and in winter you just get potatoes and onions and cabbages, and and the odd parsnip. And I think that's kind of why we probably import. So this kind of the main reason we import so much food is just about kind of like cultural habits of being able to eat tomatoes all year round or things like that. So I guess like maybe a bit more like sensitivity around what we eat and when would really kind of like enrich that sort of research. I think my other question was going to be about sort of just like labor, like this kind of this kind of like agroforestry, these kind of different farming things. They're quite labor intensive, like in a way that's kind of why our farming, I'm really not an expert on this sort of stuff, but my kind of understanding is like our farming systems kind of developed because as labour's become more expensive, one farmer can farm 200 hectares on their own basically. And particularly nowadays, it's really hard to get the seasonal workers to harvest things. And again, that's why the seasons really comes into this, because you need a lot of labour in the autumn to harvest food, and then you don't really need any labour in like January, and how you moderate that. And I think there's probably something in there where like looking at the peri-urban is probably a really interesting way, because then young people could maybe live in a city where they want to live to be kind of have the like social and cultural connections of living in a city, but I think there is also this kind of like desire a lot of young people to have like more meaningful work and to work outdoors and things like that. So I think that kind of maybe looking at like how people would work on these farms, where those people would live, how they would travel to those sites, could be an interesting thing to look at, or maybe you have looked at already.
In my project right now, I just focus on developing the farmer cluster, connect the small farmland to reduce the cost of each farmer. Maybe and in my bullet, I organize a different small-scale farmland within 5 hectares, and depending on the regular farm research, I calculate the agroforestry and orchard and polytunnel and market garden, how much land they use to plant different variety, and I depend on these areas organize different type of small farmland for farmer to show what variety types of farm they can plant fruits and vegetables, and maybe within the small scale farmland they can reduce the cost by each farm, and connect small farmland can create large landscape effect chain. And market garden in my project also focus on how to deal with the small farmland. So maybe and I want to show the within the 5 hectares farmland, the government ignore unfunded, except can develop the market garden, also can develop agroforestry, and maybe we change this vision, we can transform our site to just feed the UK population to the global site to improve our environment for the future. And so maybe the seasonal product I need to focus on for the future work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you go first.
Can I go?
Yeah.
Really, really great presentation. It's super interesting to see those pieces of work from the LWA laid out spatially like that. I have one just kind of a thought on some of the questions that people have been posing about the seasonal thing that maybe would be interesting if you look at that in the future, but maybe those warehouses that you've included in your design, they could have spaces for processing summer vegetables and storing them for the winter so that they could be distributed out of season. Could be one way of dealing with that. One question I had, though, was a lot of the staple vegetables that are included in veg boxes that we eat a lot in the UK are grown more at a field scale, not on market gardens necessarily, but on larger farms. And maybe I just didn't catch it, but I was curious about how those larger farms that supply those staples, even when it just comes to fruit and veg like potatoes, carrots, onions, did they figure into your spatialization at all? Or is that sort of considered outside of the scope of the strategy?
I'm not
In the growing communities, they belong to the rest of UK 5%, so probably they are not in your special model. Not like the 17.5, there's a 5% that says rest of the UK. No, I'm just suggesting that's
Actually, I'm not sure how to answer this question. I think the spatial modeling. Now we just focus on the 17.5% of the para-urban area and 35% rural areas to show the most of revival cropland for feed the whole UK population, and to take the urban domestic and urban area. This is some deal with urban, how to use the urban green belt for the planting. Maybe we can use the green belt in urban center and use the little small green belt land for the planting. So 17.4% of the para-urban cropland and 35 rural land maybe can develop the large farmland, and para-urban domestic, urban domestic and urban area for the small market garden. And in my bullet, I label the field trip work in Sheffield, and I along the agroecological corridor that I analysis within this agroecological, I do free trip from the urban center to para-urban, and divided the green belt for 4 types, and maybe the in front of the house green belt for the market garden, and some park green belt like parks, and country services for market garden, or some potential for agroforestry, and the rural areas maybe we can develop in the larger farm, including agroforestry, market, polytunnel, and orchards like this. So I think from the urban center to rural area, use the green belt, we can divide it the small scale and larger scale, and the largest scale to how to use the green belt to develop the farmland.
maybe I can step in here. I had similar questions related to seasonality and forms of labor. So I'm going to ask you something different. Because first of all, again, I'd like to congratulate you as well for the very interesting project. And you make it, you made it, and you make it look like it's very straightforward, no, and very linear and like a smooth process, no, the way in which it's planned and the strategy and the way in which it can be actualized. So I was wondering if, in the way in which you foresee this project to be actualized now in real life, which is the critical aspect that you think that you consider more important or more that is really the hardest that you would have to tackle at the moment to make this project doable?
I think create spatial modeling is the first most important work in this project. And we use spatial modeling to show how to capture the city scale to develop the farmer-focused routes to help farmers, land workers to sell their products during the city scale from rural area to city center, to the urban center. And during the research, we found the important issue is how to shorten the supply chain from rural to urban center. So we can use spatial modeling as a tool, as a very vital tool to show peri-urban is a important link to connect urban and rural areas, can create a vital network to solve the problem, how to help rural farmers to sell their products within peri-urban areas directly. They don't need to sell their products from rural area to city center. And using peri-urban spatial modeling, the areas they can planting their plants. They can planting the fruits and vegetables and redistribution for the city center. So spatial modeling we create help to capture the city scale, how to organize the supply chain, and how to show peri-urban is a very important link to solve lots of problems. And we want to solve the problem to use warehouses use warehouses the facility to show how to help the rural farm to sell their products within the peri-urban areas directly. And during the research, I want to show which vegetables they need to resupply, and how to attract a new entrants, support the revival farmland for the future. So create the function about the training the new entrants. I think this is a very important step for how to support the new entrants. And we focus on CSE and school procurement. Mainly want to use the two-way to help the land workers to sell their products. And we compare the CSE and the school procurement, the relationship, and also organize with the warehouses to show how to organize warehouses to support the CSE and school procurement supply chain for the community customers. And school meals, by my research, they are not all the primary school have their own kitchen. So in our warehouses also can set up the kitchen for the school meals. So I think warehouses is another very important link for my project. Yeah.
So it's very about the infrastructures, the porosity of the infrastructure, and the facility that are available, right?
Sorry.
Is it? I'm just recapping in a way. Like so, therefore, what I get is that it's mainly about the infrastructure you create.
Yeah.
So the porosity of the accessibility of each actor, in the larger system, and it's about the facilities, right?
Yeah.
It's about what people are have available to work with. Is it more about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in my project during the research, I also want to find some problems within the LWA report, or want to find the ruralization policy to find some trends to support my ideas, because I want to show the proposal is following the trends for the future. It's not just depend on my own idea. I think want to support some, find some vital support and in the three policy I show in my structure, and when I want to solve the problem, I find some support and ideas, and use the spatial modeling to show where area is most important, and use the facility to organize the functions to support how to solve the problem. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, well, again, I think it's impressive. You've done a lot of work, and you certainly are very convinced about your idea that you have to ruralize the world. I'm sorry, I'm an absolutely unreformed and unreformable townie, so no chance that I would join your scheme at all. And I think we had a majority, because when you look at the geopolitical global picture and the longer term, you see that the trend is to urbanization, rapid, absolutely global, everywhere. Here it's about 75% already in the UK, etc., and increasing. You saw the Chichester project. I mean, this meant there were more people going there, including second homes, so more construction, more buildings, more roads. There are no roads. Where do you put your trucks to bring the food to the schools, which need to be in a place? They need a critical mass for people to support schools. They are in urbanized areas. They are where people live. And the other issue, I mean, you already mentioned about the seasonality, about the workforce. You mentioned the number of staffs, 10,000, 15,000, was a very high number. Well, where do they live? When do they go there? How do they go there? What do they do when they're not working in a field for a fortnight, for the harvest, or whatever they do, or picking the fruit? And another thing is also the just way of life. I mean, the trends are, we are not in our mental disposition as human animals, social animals. We have no longer this direct relation to nature to feed ourselves autarctically and so on. And when you look at the strategy of self-sufficiency, food self-sufficiency, it's an old one. I mean, during the war, go back to the war, that's what they wanted. I mean, so let's feed ourselves because we don't get the stuff from elsewhere and so on. But it has never been realized, although the policies were there in the UK, for example, quite strong, even in the EU and all that. And even with the CAP policy and all sorts of subsidies, all sorts of, I mean, you have decades of trying to be more self-sufficient in food, and it's not happening. So my question is, why not? Maybe there is some good reasons for that. Maybe there are some reasons that the global trends are just not available for this kind of U-turn back to the land and so forth, that can ever happen. I mean, I'm just thinking the kind of geopolitical situations which are real. to see whether really this idea is of yours to say, okay, you live closer to and you feed yourself and so on, which of course isn't wrong as such, but I think is it actually realizable? That's my question. And when I look at the proposals for the green belt, I mean, it takes you 2 hours by car to get somewhere near the green belt from here. Anyway, so how do these people go and work there? So I thought maybe there is another way of looking at this, like, for example, that you have more allotments, more where people have little spaces in the urban areas, more green areas where people, and this is actually very in demand. In fact, if you make it available, like, for example, in Berlin, which you have seen, they are so very used, and people start to get to know how to grow things again, because we have no tradition of that. We have no knowledge of that. We have, we're townies. We are with our computer, and we're not working with nature. So I think maybe it would be interesting to keep your idea that you should be closer to nature and we should be able to feed ourselves and so forth. But maybe to look at spatially, maybe it would have to be a different type of spatial model to accommodate that. That is what I'm thinking in response to what you have shown.
How to check a new entrant fully understand how to use our green belt or join our green belt.
Well, I think, sorry, we don't have a lot of time, but I think the problem is actually against everything of what you said, because basically whatever the world is trending doesn't mean it's good, no? So even if the world is urbanizing, the cities depend on many landscapes that are overlooked, no? So agricultural land, extractive land, etc. And there are many people being exploited because of that. We want to continue exploiting all these people, peasants in the global south, peasants and migrants in Spain, and migrants here in the UK in the agricultural landscape. So I think it's not about following the trend of what is going on. It's like facing the problems of what cities like London requires. No, so we require to look at those agricultural landscape and look at the ways in which we actually feed ourselves, in which we actually require those materials. And so the question is not like, well, am I used to these things? Like who my life is depending on other lives. No, so look at the migrant situation here in the agricultural. The seasonality of labor, it's outrageous, no? Like the way people are being exploited by the way we eat. And so, I don't know if you look at the beginning, perhaps wasn't really explained, but there's a gradual organization of how you can actually organize the production of food. And this is not, and perhaps it wasn't really clear, but this is not a work that Chin invented on her own. No, this is based on the Land Workers Alliance report that it's called Market Renaissance, that basically organizes and thinks about different gradients of production of food that can come from what we call rural areas, no, or semi-rural areas or peri-urban landscapes. And the issue that one can use the greenbelt as a productive has been seen by many organizations. So it's not just one individual like the student here thinking about that. There's a lot of think tanks organizations that are basically trying to expose and through actual research demonstrate that it's possible. Well, perhaps, no one is really talking about feeding ourselves with the food here, because obviously our way of lives, it was mentioned here, we cannot avoid the fact that we like to have cherry tomatoes the whole year round. But at the same time, do we want to continue exploiting the planet the way it's being exploited? And this is the system in which we live. So I think one of the things that the program is engaging is to try to find alternatives, but not just coming from the program, like engaging with the reports, engaging with, there's the Land Workers Alliance, there's Share Assets, there's Autonomy, there's many other people that are producing these reports, and these aren't, thoughts that comes out of nowhere. So I think it's important to not dismiss them, but just engage in the way they are being produced. And I think that one of the reasons the program is doing this is basically to visualize that. So I think it's all the ideas, all the criticisms are welcome, but I think it's important to not dismiss the fact that whether we are used to urban environments, it's an important thing. We need to understand how we actually live today. So we can continue this conversation.
I think the debate is very interesting, but we are overdoing the time. I'm sorry. But we can, over the break, there will be some lunch, and we can continue this very interesting debate.
I wish to respond to that. I didn't say that she shouldn't do what she does, quite the reverse. And I quite agree with you. You don't want more of the same and you don't want exploitation and all that. All I'm saying, I'm trying to look at the bigger picture and say, how do you turn this juggernaut around? That was really my issue. And maybe there are not just one solution, but there are several in parallel.
I think the fact that it's like the Land Workers Alliance, I think, is interesting because, like, I think what we're talking a lot about is like labour and like where people live. And in your report as well, it said, that like GDP per person in a city is like 34,000. In the rural, it's 19,000. It's a lot of what the Land Workers Alliance do is like trying to get better paid work for people that aren't the landowning farmers. And I think like Sumac might be quite interesting to look at. Like they're like a food production company. Like you can buy like their tinned beans in supermarkets, but they're a workers co-op and they do job rotations. So the person that drives the forklift also does admin, also does this other stuff. And that kind of like work sharing might be a way to like address that like seasonality of work. But still have like meaningful employment rather than it just being like really poorly paid, below minimum wage, like seasonal work.
No, I think that's crucial aspect.
Yeah, sorry. No.
Yeah, you can what they prepare.
No. I think what I was like, because I think the idea of feeding ourselves is really important, but there's also quite a lot of technologies, like what Whole Food is doing. I think they're growing things in the dark in their things. There's a whole issue with waste from vegetables. There's also maybe the idea that seeds, that people can do, like have seeds in their house, they could do a seed program. I just thought, I think the idea is great, but it felt as if you were using old technology, whereas maybe now with new technology and AI, there would be a chance of implementing it, even though it's failed previously. I think that was...
There's a lot of stuff to discuss about agriculture, especially, as I said, like when people say we're living in the urban age, there's so much implications when one discusses, like, well, should we all accept that as a premise, or should we challenge that? So I think it's important.
Yeah, but I think you may need to, yeah. But you need to, but there you go.
Hello everyone, here is Yun and Shuheng, and today our project is towards agroecology, urbanism in Chichester. Here is our project brief. Basically, Chichester's landscape are currently managed in fragmented way, with policy treating each landscape separately. Our agroecological urbanism approach recognizes these landscapes are interconnected system. By applying agroecological principles and practice, we aim to unify landscapes, communities, and industries. Through this approach, we hope to generate social, economic, and environmental benefits, fostering a more sustainable and resilient region. So in the beginning, we analyzed Chichester's key industries, including agriculture and fishery. Currently, these sectors are facing significant challenges, such as monoculture practice in agriculture, the depletion of fishery resources, as well as the pollution of the bay. To address these issues, a transition towards more sustainable practice is urgently needed. In this section, we try to visualize a problem faced by Chichester Harbour and how these environmental issues and industry interact with each other. and then its policy structure, and this image summarizes the policies impacting both land and sea landscape, organized by the scale and the authority responsible for their implementation. For example, the environmental land management policies influence all agriculture landscape across the UK. Later in the presentation, we'll explore in detail how these policies could be adjusted to support alternative approaches for managing land, designing this landscape more comprehensively through agroecology principles. Then we'll talk about the policy issues. Basically, current policies focused on addressing individual landscape, but are challenging to implement because they operate independently and follow separate timeline and individual choices, despite interconnected nature of landscape. So according to the current situation, we identified the oyster, kelp, and reeds as having the potential to purify water and restore the habitat. And oyster farming is as a per-existing industry that could be revived when the water quality improves. And also the farmland has the potential for renewed and biodiversity agriculture landscape to support the local community. And based on the potential landscape and the potential products we find, we realize that the products can be applied to more aspects of teachers. For example, reeds can be used to enhance habitat restoration. It can also be used for building materials through the exploration of bio-based materials. And to link all these aspects, we use agroecologic principles and practice to help teachers to balance agriculture, environmental, and community needs to address environmental issues while reducing policy fragmentation. And on the right are the 10 principles of agroecology. To implement this principle effectively, we propose a fragment work consisting four components to illustrate these components in practice. We will present two case studies that demonstrated the concept we would like to work with. One is public common partnership, and another one is enterprise stacking. First, it's the operation of public common partnership. We use Clamor community interest company as a case study, and this project based on the Isle of Skye partnered with local communities to create food systems that restore ecosystems and tackle social challenges. They work and emphasize regenerated safe farming and minimize food waste while supporting local communities. Basically, they construct a structure like this, and in the intertidal zone to cultivate oyster and kelp and contribute to generation of marine environment. Additionally, they collaborate with local restaurants and materials experts to develop sustainable materials and bio-building materials. When the tidal recedes, the structure transforms to a table that provides a space for technical exchange and food sharing activities. And here is a structure of glamour community interest company, and we can see the group and the people, the different kind of group and people, they work together to contribute this project. In this way, coastal communities can reconnect and reshape local food system in the way that are ecologically restorative, socially restorative, and support food security. And then we'll talk about enterprise stacking in Chichester. In Wakeling Farm. And Wakeling Farm is an innovative agriculture farm. They hope to build on link and collaborate across the organic, scientific farming, food baking, restaurant, environmental, ecological, and political communities, locally and across the UK and beyond. Implement in the idea of enterprise stacking. And the enterprise stacking allows the intergeneration of several enterprises into a farm to benefit from the farm's products. And this model illustrates the distribution of enterprise and products in Wakeling Farm, offering a distinct approach compared to traditional farm. This method has the potential to generate a great ecological and economic benefits. And based on the above, we develop a new agroecological transformation model for Chichester, and this is a model. This model leverage agroecological technologies to promote sustainable agriculture and fishery that are more environmentally friendly and enable the production of a wide variety of products. Through the enterprise stacking, these products and byproducts can be better integrated into local market and other sectors. If used together with models such as community benefit society, it will play a key role in implementing these technologies and strengthening economics, strengthening connection with community. Additionally, relevant policies can provide essential technical and financial support to facilitate this transformation. And our proposal starts with agriculture transformation, moving from local monocultures to more diverse model to improve soil quality, to reduce agriculture pollution, and in the end, enrich the products of agriculture. The transformation must be supported by incentives provided by policies such as environmental land management schemes, the sustainable farming incentive, which we call SFI, part of the UK Environmental Land Management Scheme, now offer more flexible higher payments and additional actions to support sustainable agriculture and environmental goals. We visualize the relevant policies that could be applied to agriculture land in Chichester. Through these policies, the quality of soil can be improved and the use of chemical will be reduced. And these policies enhance the ecological diversity of agriculture land, reduce agriculture runoff pollution, and strengthens the connection between agriculture and natural land. And same as the last one, and this policy are focused on strengthening the link between agricultural land and natural land. The countryside stewardship is another policy that can support agriculture transformation in Chichester. Similar to SFI, these are mainly policies that can reduce the agriculture pollution and the coastal restoration. And according to above, we classify the relevant agroecological techniques for the area. This diagram shows some planting techniques such as intercrop, crop rotation, and so on. And these are mainly techniques related to hedging and the management of several varieties of productive trees. And these are techniques mainly involved to establishment and management grass buffer as a biodiverse landscape surrounding the agricultural land. And in the coastal area, we proposed the restoration of degraded wetland and marine habitats, and tackle the pollution problems with relevant agroecological practice. In this process of transformation, we develop about agriculture products and byproducts to revival the traditional industries. And to achieve this, we look at the main policies that can support this shift, which is fishery and seafood scheme. And on the right, we highlight the activity related to the agriculture development and the marine environment enhancement from our projects. And we outline some of the policies under the FASS that can fund these activities. And depending on the water level, we set up different agriculture techniques units to restore the ecology of the bay. And this diagram shows how to set up of these units. And to implement this transformation, we establish a community benefit society similar to the community interest society. At the outside of the project, our primary goal was environmental restoration, specifically restoring habitat and addressing coastal water pollution. And this catalog on the right highlights some of the action taken in this phase, particularly in the introduction of agroecology and in agriculture line to prevent fertilizers from polluting the bay. Additionally, here are some of the groups involved. These organizations are currently working on environmental restoration of the sea of the harbor. By collaborating with them, we can share technology and simplify the implementation of the process. And for the agriculture line, the CBIs can work with local farmers to implement more sustainable techniques, but mostly it will help to follow agroecologic practice to ensure a long-term benefits of bay. When all these product merchant, CBS can work with materials companies to develop byproducts and working with this business and farmers to promote the more ecological byproducts. And in the final stage, in the final stage, when the water is restored, the seafood is edible. A restaurant and a seafood company can get more involvement and benefits. In this section, we visualize more detail the actions taken by CBIs in different stages to transform the landscape. And on the first stage, there is a need to restore a natural habitat in the bay by using some agriculture techniques. And these lines in the section connect the stakeholders with activities and transformation in the bay that they could support. And here are some actions to recover the salt marsh, as well as the stakeholders that can participate in. It stopped. And for the, sorry, it should be an animation, but can't play now. For the agriculture line, CBIs can collaborate with local farmers to adopt more sustainable practices, primarily focused on agroecologic principles to ensure long-term benefits for the bay, as explanation in the first part of the presentation. Okay, sure. And on the stage 2, once the product merged, CBIs can collaborate with some material companies to develop byproducts and work alongside business and farmers to promote relevant products for the community. And the products such as oil shell, reed beds, and kelp can be used to build or renew the house, restore the seabed, and biofertility in farmland. Yeah. When the soil quality improves, farmer can grow higher value crop for local markets and enhance the biodiversity of the area. And when the water and habitat restored, restored, the seafood is edible. There could be more restaurant and tourism activities involved, where CBS can decide the intents of such activities as well as benefits they can extract from it. And we can also see the changes in environments which show to be more diversity and more religion.
Okay, the last chapter is about the design details of the sea farm. And we choose the Bay of Bolsham, and this used to have a thriving oyster farming industry. In the proposal of coastal aquaculture, we choose as an example a modular scheme, cutting the farm into 2-meter side units, which we can freely combine according to the geographical conditions of the site. There is our 4 types of units. The first of which is the reed bed, mainly located in the coastal salt marsh area. And these models shows the relationship between the farm and the tidals. The blue models show that. And the second type is the oyster farm located in the intertidal zone. And the third is aquaponic farm, a combine of shellfish and seaweed located in the subtidal zone. The latest is the reef made from recycled oyster shell and that can be dropped on the seafloor to restore the marine environment. Here is the tour list of the tours we'll be using on the farm and the sea farm. Here we can see our various products that this chain can offer, which land farms providing agricultural products such as grains and vegetables, and reed bed can offer reed, using as building materials as well as some horticultural products. These tidal landscapes and deep water area can produce a variety of native fish and shellfish as well. Alongside the environmental benefits, some local business and regional activities could thrive, such as local markets, festivals, and local events to promote the local products. This chart shows the connection and the product cycles between the agroecology industry. Sorry, the video is can't play now. To illustrate a basic financial model of the CBS, we show how the Bay would require government support and policy incentive to start the transformation, while thriving aquaculture and agroecology industry could generate economic benefits in the near future. At the first, the implementation of aquaculture and water infrastructure to restore the quality of the bay should be priority, which will take most of the funding and incentives. In the second stage, seawater purification is completed, marine ecology is gradually restored, and the oyster produce on the farm can be eaten and sold for community revenues. The construction of the third stage of the sea farms was completed, and any extra income could be invested to draw in economic development of the surrounding areas and into the CBS management and projects. Finally, we developed these images to envision how we imagine the bay transformation into a sea farm, where we get to see oyster shell reef, oyster farms, the worker harvesting the seaweeds. In the image, the white code represents the tourist and the techniques that will be used in the area, and the black code represents the corresponding policy to support such activities. The final image shows the interface landscape between the land and the sea. We see the local agriculture in the distance, include the salt mesh and red beds in the right, and the use of the intercropping to change the original monoculture. We plant the hedgerows to protect the farmland boundaries and to build the wildlife corridor to promote the biodiversity. That's all. Thanks for watching.
Okay, actually, watching this made me think, what have these projects in common and how do they differ from each other? And I think it's about transformation and transformation for the better, for the more ecological, for the more sustainable. We all agree with that, all three of them, actually. Now, from my critical standpoint, so well, how much is it, do you just do a theoretical exercise, or do we want to do something which stands a chance to be realized, even over the long term, as you have shown, 5 years, 10 years, 35, etc. And then I was thinking, yes, the first project, yes, there might be a chance. I mean, it's just me speculating. This one also. The second one, less. Why? And I think it's because you and the first one, you are building on what is there, very much so. We have the different approaches to analysis, different standpoints, never mind that. But you can see that, and it's a step by step, it's a sort of gradual, this transformation is not overnight, and it's not coming from top down, it's not a diktat, it is something which you think organically, or whatever word you want to use, can actually happen. It also means that I was thinking, who is knowledgeable of doing oyster farms, for example? Maybe they're not, but the process, the ecological process is one thing. The other one is to interest people into it, to give them the necessary training, subsidies, whatever, etc., so that it is also the local economy benefits. People will not move to another part of the world because of that. And I think this is why I like this project, because it has been very much thinking of what can you do, at what also when you showed your various parts of your ecological agriculture. I mean, one underwater, one on the shore, one on the land, and to diversify that. I think this is for me very interesting. I mean, I know nothing about agriculture, I have to confess, but was very convincing.
Yeah, well, I've seen this project before. I think your analysis is really good. I think the stacking a lot of it has been discussed also, I think, with the community and with the Conservancy. They've also given their input. The only thing I'm not entirely sure about is the Bay of Bosom, because it's a prime tourist destination at the moment, and it's also recreational space. But maybe if it is a flagship project, it might be a reason for tourists to come there. I don't know. But I think all the things you're talking about, oysters, I think they are trying to bring back all these things. So you're very much building on the questions that are there and making it a bit more radical for people to unite behind it. And I think reusing the oyster shells, the stacking, using the straw from the other farming to whatever. I think that all is very good, and a very, very clear presentation and beautiful drawings.
Thank you.
Did you want to respond to either of those two?
Yeah. Actually, we would like to show this picture. We would like to use the sea farm as a keyword to connect all the industry in the agroecology. We would like to use the oyster farm to connect all the industry in the agroecology and in the churches, such as our main products, the oyster. In the first stage, because of the purification, it's not for edible. So we can use the oyster to do such as fertilizer for the farmland and reduce the soil pollution. And we can use the oyster shell to made of the reef to restore the marine ecology and to do such as building materials like this. And I think it's a trend line to promote the Chichester economic like this.
One more small question.
Okay.
Have you thought about rising sea levels?
Sorry?
Have you thought about rising sea levels?
So,
yes, teachers have problem with coastal squeeze. So at the coastal area, sorry, 1 minute. We use this technique to protect the bay and against the coastal squeeze. For example, uses salt marsh bed and just to restore the destroyed salt marsh. And I think maybe this is a point that about to against the sea level or sea the
Okay, about the sea level, I think the oyster farm can be built in the intertidal area, so it can, according the water deep, to build different types, such as the aquaponic farm can be built on the deep water because the fish and the seaweed only growing on the seafloor, and the oyster farm and the reed bed can be built in the intertidal area because they sometimes they don't need water anymore.
Yeah, that was a really good presentation. I really enjoyed the drawings. I was thinking about, I think you talk about using public commons partnerships, but I think when you're talking the public part of that seemed to be quite lacking. You talk about a community benefit society kind of introducing these elements, but I think when you look at Climavore, they're mainly they kind of set up using arts funding, but then basically kind of very quickly moved into kind of income generating stuff, using oyster shells to produce stuff that they could sell. And the way most PCPs are kind of set up to run is they're taking things that are big economic generators and trying to common them to better distribute those kind of profits, whether it's a big market building in Tottenham or oyster farming in Scotland or pharmaceuticals in France. And I think here the way you talked about the CBS kind of operating to start with being sort of advice and governance, and then kind of phase 2 being kind of income generating, and phase 3 kind of the restaurant and stuff coming on, I feel is a bit the wrong way around. And I think can't quite imagine that getting off the ground, whereas if it's kind of focused a bit more on the economic activities to start with, that might help kind of build up the kind of surpluses that are then needed to do all that other more ecological work that goes against current economic orthodoxy, and that's why we need these different incentives to try and produce it basically. And I think what I mean about the public being lacking is the public there in PCP means like big public, like the council, the state. And is that because these bays are, I guess what I'm unsure about is like what's the like land ownership and like who owns what, and like to put an oyster farm there, who do you need permission from? Like most PCPs are set up in a way where you have a really long lease from the council or something. So it's like in their benefit that they'll give you a really cheap lease for 40 years because of all these other added benefits that I think you can really justify. But I think that's just a little bit like unclear in your presentations, like who owns that intertidal zone and what are the ownership structures for that? Like if it is owned by a public body, are they giving you a long lease on it? Are they giving you access rights to make these oyster farms and that sort of thing?
I think in the first stage, our main income from the government financial, and in the next stage, we can get the profit and the income from the oyster farm, such as sell the oyster farm, sell the oyster, and we can build some restaurant and market, and maybe we can provide some jobs and get the profit.
I think I asked that question because of that graph where it was like 35 years before it turned a profit, which I think is ambitious, like to get the kind of financing to make that happen. But maybe that's what's needed, and you need to like convince like a pension fund to fund it. But
I think I'm just to say that in the next project we'll discuss in more depth the public-common partnership. But I think it's important or it was at least in their case important to suggest a different management. And I think what you suggest is perfectly, it's clear, but there's like economically first and then ecologically. The question is like the bay is heavily polluted right now, so I don't know how you work out the two things together. It's a difficult aspect, no? But also I think they might need to clarify a little bit the issues about ownership, who manage the land. There's a bay authority that manage the whole bay, no? That it's in charge of the leisure tourist activity, but also in charge of maintaining the land. So working out how these things can actually be balanced in a different partnership is an important aspect, which I think needs to be explored perhaps in more depth. I don't know if Elena or Olivia wants to comment before we move to the next project, because sorry, we are
just
short
quickly,
of time.
Actually, my questions were quite related to those that have been already asked. So I was really curious, especially about the coastal defense and how the project would try to face certain extreme conditions as the warming environment, climate change progress. But you sort of replied to this. So I also like to congratulate with you because it's been a very nice presentation to watch and with very nice, beautiful drawings. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think all of the questions I had have been addressed in different ways already by some of the other jury members. But yeah, just congratulations. It was really interesting. And I think in particular, I really liked a lot of work on agroecology really does focus on the land. And so I thought it was particularly novel and interesting the way you incorporated land and sea. So well done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's move to the last project.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Emily and I'm here with my colleague Priyanka. We're going to present our project, Cultivating Commons, designing public common partnerships to mobilize the bio-based construction industry in the East Midlands through a landscape urbanism approach. So as we grapple with the climate and economic crises, political interest usually lies in carbon reduction, typically in the energy industry. Major corporations exploiting natural assets such as land, resources, and ecologies often evade true accountability by simply purchasing carbon credits to offset their emissions, and the construction industry is no exception. Material extraction is fossil fuel intensive and has major impacts to human health and biodiversity. The construction industry actually contributes to 40% of the UK's total carbon emissions. For every £1 billion worth of goods imported into the UK in 2021, the associated production and transportation of those goods attributed to 1.2 million tons of carbon dioxide, which is equivalent to 2,500 flights from London to New York. So to what extent are the overseas impacts accounted for in carbon calculations? The UK is targeting net zero by 2050. Meeting these demands will require a radical transformation of the industry's current operations. And in response to the UK's target, 80 UK research and innovation institutes are looking to retrofit their campuses. And this project serves as a case study for the British Geological Survey campus, which we visited earlier this year, located in the East Midlands. And from our visit, it became very clear the need to improve energy efficiency and acoustics in the labs. Conventional materials for this purpose may include rock wool insulation. But tracing the material supply chain, it becomes very apparent that it's highly carbon intensive and hazardous. So, in search of alternative retrofitting materials that have lower carbon emissions, lesser impact on the natural environment, and have potential benefits to local economies, we investigated 6 different bio-based materials. From our analysis, we selected seaweed and shellfish for use in the BGS retrofitting project. So firstly, straw, because it's straw, seaweed, and shellfish. So firstly, straw, because it's abundantly available in the East Midlands and the industry is well established. So to understand more about the certification of straw buildings, we spoke with Cyprian Edmonds from the UK Straw Bale Association. We also investigated the potential of using kelp and shellfish. Kelp has a high carbon sequestration potential and uses minimal resources to grow. Kelp is currently used as a fertilizer in agriculture. However, with more R&D, there is potential for it to be used as a construction material. And similarly, shellfish can be used for rendering. To learn more about this, we visited Ali Wharf on the Norfolk coast, who has Norfolk seaweed, and she also has an oyster farm, to learn more about the actual production methods. And we also met with Sam Fenshaw from Sussex Kelp. The renders here show our prototyping proposal for the BGS using straw insulation, seaweed acoustic panels, and oyster shell rendering. We want to note that there's differing timelines between the availability of straw for construction and the potential 10 years that might be required to actually upscale the industries for kelp and shellfish. But firstly, we envision that seaweed could produce fertilizer for use in the agricultural industry for the production of cereals, which straw is a byproduct, and then eventually, with further development, it could be used in construction. So from prototyping the BGS retrofitting project, we know that bio-based materials have promising benefits and offer replacements to conventional building materials. But if we scale the bio-based industries in a business-as-usual model, the production could easily continue in a monoculture way, which detriments landscapes. And also the profits could be reserved to large corporations, and the transition to bio-based could impact industrialized communities. So our project moves beyond using bio-based materials to meet net zero targets, to address 3 key things. How it's produced, so the quality and health of the landscapes of production. Who benefits, the prevailing ownership structures within the supply chain, and also who will produce bio-based materials, ensuring a just transition of labor propelled by an industrial shift in the construction industry.
So how can we produce bio-based materials in ways that can enhance the local ecologies and improve the biodiversity within the East Midlands bioregion? To mobilize this industry, we have initiated a phased approach, beginning with testing and trialing of production of cereals for straw and bio-based construction. And we refer to these sites as prototyping sites. Prototyping sites are located on council farms and underutilized council-owned lands and brownfields. Sites are strategically located in areas of high unemployment or underskilled workers, indicated on the map with the gray pluses. And once the prototyping takes off, kelp and expanded aquaculture emerges along the coast as well. With rising demands in straw for construction, we envision that private farmers within 10 kilometers of the prototyping site would be incentivized by the ELMs in a phased manner to practice agroecology. And therefore, we have not only considered the design of individual farms, but how they can provide ecological benefits and improve the fragmentation within the landscape mosaic. Similarly, we cross-analyze marine conditions to identify opportunities to integrate marine rewilding. The landscapes of consideration in East Midlands include woodlands, industrialized sites, urban areas, coastal areas, and agrarian landscapes. From there, we conducted a regional mosaic analysis to understand how the distribution of enhanced agroecological production sites could contribute to the overall structure and function of ecosystems within the broader bioregion. However, when we visited the site recently, the typical agrarian landscapes of East Midlands are characterized by monoculture farming with very sparse wind buffers, and similarly, some of the urban prototyping sites that we selected are also in derelict conditions with abandoned structures, or they are completely covered with shrubs and grasses. So to visualize our proposal, the area shown here is on the outskirts of Clifton in Nottingham, which is approximately 7 kilometers away from BGS. It's situated along Ferrum Brook, which is a priority habitat area. So the landscapes shown here include very isolated instances of parcels, of ecological parcels that could be strengthened and well connected in the network through the agroecological farming of straw. And these principles include growing perennial wheat, tree buffers, and livestock grazing to regenerate the soil and further strengthen the connections at a multi-farm level through biodiverse recreational trails. Similarly, in the seaweed industry, we looked at the community of Skegness, which is a coastal community vulnerable to flooding and which is highly reliant on tourism. Seaweed farms could emerge along the coast as indicated with the black and white patches. We speculate that existing shellfish farms could uptake kelp production, and as capacity builds, these seaweed farms can combine farming and recreation. And we are proposing that seaweed could be produced using an integrated multi-trophic aquaculture of kelp and shellfish to diversify the production. So from an environmental and economic diversification standpoint, the bio-based industry is extremely promising. But to get this off the ground, we need to question who is responsible for funding and providing resources and education to mobilize this industry and who profits from the emergent bio-based industry. Thank you.
So conventional procurement for this type of project would typically follow a PPP model, public-private partnership model. And these are a collaboration between public sector agencies and private companies to finance, build, and operate large public projects. In a PPP arrangement, public money, land, or assets are given to private for-profit corporations to provide those goods and services. Echoing the works of dark matter labs, if these resources flow through existing governance structures, they could lead to further commodification, privatization, and centralization of goods and assets. So this would all be blanketed under a net zero agenda. We needed to look at alternative forms of governance and policy, and one of those being public common partnerships. So PCPs are an institutional form that democratizes the management and ownership of an asset or resource. To initiate this, progressive procurement is required. So building on the REBA work plan overlay by ACON titled Circular Economy for Retrofitting Projects, we have developed our own bio-based retrofitting for bioregional economies overlay. And what this is, it basically prescribes the quality of materials, agroecological production methods, among other considerations. So procurement guidelines would essentially incentivize the UKRI to collaborate with other anchor institutions within the region to mobilize a strategy for local industry to provide the materials and services according to the BEF guidelines that we've proposed. And this mutually beneficial partnership would initiate the public-common partnership, which is diagrammed here. So to begin, we mapped the actors such as anchor institutions, including the BGS, local councils, and higher education institutions within Nottinghamshire, just to exemplify it within the area that BGS is located. And anchor institutions are typically publicly funded entities that have a degree of permanence in the local economy. Oh, and ultimately, if I can go back. I can't go back. Okay, sorry, I just skipped. Oh, yeah, there. So this is ultimately our public-common partnership model that we've designed, and it does seem quite complex. However, we're going to break it down through a model visualization in the coming section. And that's also noted in the handbook. So to gather real-world perspectives on the proposal, we conducted a survey with 13 industry experts, and we ended up receiving 8 very generous responses that enriched the policy proposal, which we then modified after these comments. So to explain the formation of the PCP and exemplify the roles and responsibilities for those involved, we created this physical model, and we've also created a video to prototype and simulate how those interactions occur. We've identified prototype sites across the East Midlands for testing bio-based construction methods, upskilling and reskilling the local labour forces, and engaging local communities. This site identified in the landscape network map, located within Basford in Nottingham, will be used to explain the evolution of the public-common partnership. The diagram shown on screen illustrates the actors within the public-common partnership. They are color-coded according to their roles, and the video will demonstrate their responsibilities within the PCP framework. The Bio-Based Commons Association is comprised of designer, PCP advisor, local council, and university researcher. The Bio-Based Prototyping Committee consists of the ward representative, trade unions, and community interest groups. The farming cluster representative oversees the marine workers and land workers. Members and allies include bio-based manufacturers, local businesses, underskilled workers, transition labor, and contractors. PCP would further involve an environmental authority at a regional and local scale. The PCP is formed on a project basis, currently initiated by the UKRI. The prototype site, located on underutilized council-owned lands, is identified and conditions are reviewed by the Environmental Authority. The trade unions discuss local skill availability with the East Midlands Bio-Based Commons Association. The community interest groups advocate for engagement with the surrounding community, and the PCP advisor explains roles and responsibilities for the PCP participants and formalize the Bio-Based Prototype Committee. The UKRI funds the UK Bio-Based Federation, who finances the East Midland Bio-Based Commons Association for developing the prototyping site. The UKRI representative meets with the association and prototype committee to discuss project implementation and phasing. The labour force, who are members of the association, are supported by the trade union to prepare the site. The Bio-Based Association and Prototype Committee build consensus with the members around the delivery of reskilling and upskilling programs. They also discuss opportunities for allies to participate and support members in the PCP. Post-cleanup, the designer, PCP advisor, and ward representative revisit the site to discuss next steps. The designer and labour force mark out the site. The designer promotes prototype initiatives and builds awareness for site activities as advised by the community interest group representative. The designer and university researchers engage with local farming clusters to connect with marine workers. The marine worker brings raw materials to the site, and the manufacturers supply seaweed plastic. The ward representative reviews progress with the local council and researcher. University researcher and the land worker experiment crop propagation and growing with kelp fertilizer. The temporary structure is constructed using the seaweed plastic. University researchers experiment with shellfish plasters. The designer and university researcher have straw delivered to the site by a land worker. They discuss assembly methods with contractors and labor force interested in upskilling for the construction of straw panels. The laborers mark out the site office building and start to build. It will serve as headquarters for the regional association. The build is an experimental process for testing plasters and different bio-based construction methods. Once complete, the prototype committee begins site programming and operating under the guidance of the Bio-Based Association. They define a plan for the flying factory to supply materials for the BGS retrofitting. Community interest groups engage with the labor force to receive feedback and relay information to the Bio-Based Prototype Committee to discuss how they can best support contractors, underskilled workers, and transition labor. Material workshops are conducted by the Regional Bio-Based Association. Manufacturers and contractors will come to site showcasing that final products will be produced through PCP and agroecology, formulating the supply chain map. The network of producers, manufacturers, and PCP members discuss expansion opportunities and where the next prototype site, or PCP, could be mobilized. Surplus of skilled labor, research knowledge, and materials will be redistributed to other PCPs by the Regional Bio-Waste Association. So bio-based industries can only be mobilized with policy-level changes that not only mandate the use of bio-based materials in construction, but also reduce the reliance on extractive materials for these activities. So the transition towards bio-based materials, while necessary for addressing the climate crisis, could put additional pressures for production and management to already vulnerable communities, such as marine and land workers and other informal workers. And hence, it demands a comprehensive strategy to foreground the labor force for the design, planning, and implementation of this proposal.
So before that, let's look at the history of East Midlands. The East Midlands has a long history of industrialization beginning from 17th century, as the region is rich in minerals such as coal and ironstone, particularly in North Derbyshire. However, due to transportation limitations, the market for coal was mainly local, and until there were new rails laid out in the second half of the century, and that is when East Midlands began mining extensively and exporting the materials to other parts of the country. However, it remains a key industrial hub even today, with the mining and quarrying sectors employing 6,000 out of the 22,000 people working in these industries across England. This makes the region the largest employer in this sector nationwide. Therefore, it is essential to consider a just transition for East Midlands. So we have speculated it occurring in two parts: the transition away from extractive industries and how the labor force can shift towards the bio-based sector. So how can we reduce extraction? The UK is facing challenges balancing industry demands for conventional materials with biodiversity goals for protecting land and nature, in the midst of limited availability of resources and environmental taxes. And while environmental taxes have increased aggregate recycling efforts, imports of these materials have also increased. This shift offloads environmental impacts to the exporting countries. And therefore, to address these challenges, the UK must adopt practices that reduce environmental impacts across the entire construction material supply chain. Practices such as adopting UK Green Building Council's embodied ecological impact framework can help evaluate construction materials based on both carbon emission and the ecosystem impacts locally and globally. Stricter import regulations could encourage the use of low-impact, locally produced bio-based materials. And finally, supply chain transparency is essential to address environmental and social impacts from foreign mining and quarrying operations. Implementing these strategies could reduce mining and quarrying in East Midlands, and therefore it could result in job loss. Through a cartographic analysis, we are showing how the districts which are already deprived and have a high concentration of quarries could be put at a greater risk, while simultaneously putting the other areas under the threat of deprivation. And hence, a just transition must be planned proactively. Referencing global examples such as the coal mining sector and the steel case study from Australia, We have prepared a phase strategy that integrates the PCP activities within a conventional just transition framework, proposing new employment opportunities for the labor force within the bio-based sector. We further try to map the skills of the workers in quarries to test their adaptability towards bio-based skills and determine who will be responsible for reskilling. To support this transition, we envision the UK Bio-Based Federation would host an e-portal. The portal would serve the labor force, businesses, and farmers. For example, the portal would identify PCPs, and the workers could see prototype site locations, initiatives, and employment opportunities. For a national strategy, we targeted regions with significant potential for bio-based materials to identify areas requiring further support to align with the needs of local communities and workers.
Cultivating Commons is a territorial proposal for mobilizing the bio-based industries to not only meet net zero targets, but improve productive landscapes, transform ownership structures, and contribute to a just transition for industrial labor forces. We imagine that with efforts from the Federation, a national transition is possible. From the beginning, we spoke of the polycrisis, encompassing climate crises, social crises, and economic crises faced by society today. And we know that each of these industries associated with the production, processing, and construction of bio-based materials are operating in a silo, trying to simultaneously address all these varied challenges. But what Cultivating Commons contributes is a proposal for a more interdependent network. This creates a more robust, self-replicating system that could expand to regions across the UK and beyond. Thank you.
Yeah, Elena, Olivia, are you there?
For your presentation, really wonderful work. I don't really have a question straight off the top of my head, but more of just a comment. Sorry, I hate to be that person. Which is one of the things I really liked about your presentation was the way that the proposals for bio-based materials could potentially have impacts on trends of like land grabbing that we're seeing in the UK. I have colleagues who work on corporate land acquisition for reforestation, and obviously part of that is around rewilding and carbon credits, but also a large part of that is for timber products, which would be maybe what people would first think of when they're thinking of bio-based materials for building. So I really like the way that your project, I guess, opens up different opportunities for what can be considered the materials for a bio-based construction industry. And I guess maybe the question in there is, did, as part of your work, you consider the implications on land ownership and some of these trends around land grabbing and land acquisition that the kind of proposals that you're making might have? Obviously, you might not have, but I think it's an interesting consideration that your project raises.
Yeah, I don't have an immediate answer, but I think one thing that has been a point of conversation over the last few weeks has been about prioritizing, like the risks of prioritizing bio-based materials, particularly for agriculture, when there's a lot of other pressing issues. Like, for example, we've heard about fruit and vegetables and shortages in terms of food supplies. So what are the risks of prioritizing agricultural lands for this type of industry rather than potentially a transition to other maybe more life-sustaining things? So I think that is maybe a point of conflict. And another thing we spoke about was the risk that local councils may like their lands may be more profitable immediately for other uses. So we talked about lending local lands for bio-based that are currently underutilized. And we hope that this would be a profitable use for them. But of course, there is always the risk that maybe someone would come along and developers' interests supersede our proposal. So those are kind of two avenues that I think maybe touch on what you asked.
Hi, congratulations. It's a very interesting project and you presented beautifully. Also, I don't have specific questions, but one I'm curious about is regarding the potential relationship that you might have, what this project can create with with RIBA and we are BA in the UK. So to understand how much, you know, that especially from this year, from architect is required to develop a plan, no, for the coming year, and it will be in this way for the next year, to address and explain how much the sustainability concern is part of the practice that we do every day, right? And I think that this project is very interesting in this sense, and I would like to know if you had any chance to speak about this with somebody and how they can, from the institution, they can make these requirements stronger, no, through the dialogue, for example, with you or with this option that you propose. At the same time, how much the code could be reshaped, no, accordingly to this new vision. And at the same time, I think that is very interesting because there is both an impact on the way we classify, you know, what's sustainable and what's not, especially in the construction sector, but also on the value of the environments we use to transform our inhabited spaces, right? So I was wondering also if you considered, for example, the value shift in this sense, meaning that when you talk about the carbon, no, that is produced and carbon credits in particular, if an environment such as the one that you produce can be revalued in a financial sense, through a deeper understanding of its ecosystem value in a larger scale, no?
So for your first question about talking to people who might be like someone from RIBA or similar institutions, I think we actually were one of the major challenges has been reaching out to these professionals who are always very busy, and that's understandable. But we just had this pre-final presentation a few weeks ago where we had experts in master planning from Arup who were there, and they suggested that they are doing something similar in East Midlands with the East Midlands Development Corporation, where they look at not only economic benefits, but like how to do that sustainably. And I think that could be a way to tie in this project into real world application, if that can go further. And secondly, about the carbon credits. What was the question? Sorry, what was your second question?
No, I was wondering if you were considering also sort of using the opportunity of the design proposal you make,
right,
to try to change the conception that we have of a certain environment being capable of just, you know, produce something which is productive per se.
Yeah. So in the actually in the handbook, we do talk about that. We can share that, which talks about the social values and how to quantify the social values. So that is exactly the progressive procurement framework, which calculates, for example, how many jobs were created, how many underskilled workers were reskilled, and that is how BGS, like UKRI, can actually include such evaluation frameworks into their procurement proposal, and that can actually give a perspective on how it benefits economically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just have one other thing to add based on practice, like with biodiversity net gain policies that have been uptaken recently. There's just a lot of risk about, like, we may be able to like more so in terms of implementing green space. Like it's not measurable it's just based on quantity of green space, or not necessarily the quality of the habitat or the green space that's being implemented. So I think that runs risk here. Like when we're talking about just ensuring bio-based materials are used, that's not really the goal here. We're trying to say that it needs to embed all these other factors like social value index, like the actual quality of the landscapes of production and how they're managed and those types of things. So I think that's where kind of the radical element comes in, is that it may be difficult for a governing body like REBA to actually evaluate all those factors and create metrics to say like, okay, they're achieving that through bio-based material. Yeah, so I think that's
definitely.
a risk or a gap.
No, but yeah, definitely. I really appreciate the main focus of the project in this sense. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it was a really good presentation. I think it's really nice to see you exploring like the contradictions or maybe like the unintended consequences of a thing, which I think is very in the zeitgeist at the moment of like everything's bio-based, like everyone's wanting to go towards bio-based materials. But I think understanding the like constraints on like land use and things, I think is really to be commended. Because I think the other thing, and I know this isn't what your project is about, but it just was making me think about there's just so many issues with bio-based materials and fire regulations, and the contradiction between those two things, how fire regulations have got a lot tighter post-Grenfell, and virtually none of the materials you're talking about would comply in high-rise buildings, and then also a lot of public funding now won't fund anything that's combustible in those kind of build-ups as well, which is, again, is just like a tension that like, I have no idea what the solution to that is. But I think it's an interesting thing to look at. I think the what I thought maybe I just wasn't quite understanding or something was I kind of was imagining that the site and the PCP would be about like sort of like a bit more about the industrial production of these things. Like I noticed in your renders you were using eco-cocon panels, and what's really interesting is like they're made in Slovenia, but like loads of like eco architects in the UK are using them, but it's like straw from like Central Europe that's then made in a factory in Slovenia and then like shipped on a lorry into the UK. And it's like, I think there'd be huge demand for like homemade straw panels, and other kind of like industrialized bio-based materials, because at the moment it's still a bit like cottage core kind of industries, and I think these more like industrialized processes using materials would be really good.
Okay. No, just that we are aware that it's the whole idea that we're going against deindustrialization, but this is also towards an industrialization, and that's what we are trying to challenge ourselves with the policy proposal, where it mandates how the material is produced in the first place, on what lands, how do they give back to the environment, and it does not perpetuate monoculture. That's what we are mainly focusing on, I suppose.
Yeah. And I guess just referencing the fact that this is an institutional retrofit, we are aware that typically I guess the current examples are all of residential homes that are being retrofitted with bio-based. So that's obviously what makes this quite optimistic, is that there's potential for it. And then in terms of fire ratings, we have seen that like straw panels can meet all the requirements for the building code, but we know that there's limitations when they get implemented in an institutional building.
We are looking to certify the products to actually, straw, for example, is very, it's been proven to be very viable in the context of UK because it's abundantly available. And there is a lot of research which is going towards certifying these materials so they can be used in conventional buildings. Yeah.
But yeah, I think just to conclude on that is that there are a lot of different practitioners who are investigating this in more depth. So I think what we took is just we sort of positioned ourselves to know that there's better research out there and on particular material quality, and that's why we looked a lot more broadly about it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've a few questions. First of all, really good presentation, and I really like the way you draw the parallel with the Industrial Revolution and the way labor needs to be. Yeah, people need to keep working. I was a bit hesitant that the UKRI is going to finance all of this. I mean, if you're being so careful about every step, I think going from one thing of dark lab, which is, I think his argument is much more complex, to UKRI, I think, yeah, you're almost short selling yourself on that. The other thing, I thought, have you thought about circularity? Because even if you have all bio-based materials, you can't have forever new straw or whatever to build everything. So is there a use after you have the straw, and if the buildings are, well, I mean, I think there's you don't have to have it developed, but have you thought about it?
I think recycling, like I think you're talking about recycling efforts and reuse efforts. Like I think it was part of the conversations initially about how the materials kind of flow and they go back to the earth, and that can help regenerate the soil in that circularity in that sense. But I think, this project was not focusing on the reuse and recycle. But that's definitely, I mean, we do acknowledge, like even with the aggregate recycling, like how that is, it's important to not keep producing more materials but recycle, and that is definitely acknowledged in the work for sure.
And the other thing, I run a very small architecture practice, and at the moment I already have 7 other overlays on the RBA stages, like it's diversity, passive house, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure how you can incorporate it. In the stages, even though it's a very useful method, the stages, and that's probably why all the others use it. Mm-hmm. I just having done quite a few CPDs lately where every single one has a new overlay or the RBA. I'm just not wondering if that's not also too easy a solution. But I think the fact that we're discussing all of these things is really, really commendable. So thank you.
Yes, very impressive. I think you really touched a hurdle, which is a really challenging one. And of course, my question would be, how did you come to choose the Midlands? Because it is really an industrial area which used enormous amount of raw materials. I mean, super capitalism, and then it already had a transformation to some post-industrial state with all the difficulties that implies. So I would have liked to hear a little bit more about the background, why you chose that. And it makes me think of an approach in Ruhr in Germany, because there as well, I mean, huge area, very ambitious as well, and they have turned it around quite, I mean, remarkably in a way in terms of environmental benefits, etc., etc. Had a lot of economic problems and so on. But the difference between the Ruhr and the Midlands is the Ruhr had extracted its own raw materials, coal. It made, it was industry, steel production, etc. Yours, they're taking the raw materials from the third world. And you showed pictures about that. And my question is, well, okay, if you can turn the institutional mentality around in the Midlands to actually see the point that they have to transform in a way and use biological materials rather than the extractive ones and so on. How can you then, control whatever is happening and the self-interest in these third world countries where all these mines are of the raw materials, which we still continue to use, like for the nuclear power and so forth. And I think that is a real issue. Another point I found was you oppose the extractive building construction materials with the alternative ones. That's okay. But again, the Midlands is very built up. I mean, it's full of leftovers of all these non-biological construction. And I wondered why you didn't include also the possibility of recycling, because there is a lot of inert CO2 in these materials, such as throw them away. is not really CO2 friendly. And henceforth, that would have been an interesting step to include in your two ways of, I mean, in a transition, if you see what I mean.
I think just to address the first question about why East Midlands, it's mainly because we began the project with a real site, which is the BGS, who approached us for a retrofitting proposal. They actually have consulted with for retrofitting, and they have an ongoing project, and that's how we investigated the area. Then the idea of local procurement, so it comes under East Midlands, and it just happens so that it's in a very deprived region, which and then we started to look into the industrialization and how it was at the forefront of material and energy production earlier, and how the communities are still very much deprived. Even like the after effects of all the mine closures can still be observed in these areas. Definitely one of the avenues that could be explored as an extension of the project would be like a lot of mines and quarries are abandoned, and they are like usually when you acquire mining permissions, you pay taxes to restore them back as to where they were, because they are not bought, they are leased. But they are just left abandoned and no work has been done. And through this type of work with flying factories, production of bio-based materials, that could be one of the avenues to restore these former sites of production as well. So